I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's once again dig into Ukraine Gate and another bombshell admission, this time via a Ukrainian MP, Andriy Derkach, who has said that he has documents. He says he has documents. We haven't seen them yet, or at least I haven't seen them. I don't know if you've gotten wind as to what's going on there with the documents being released. But this MP states that he has documents which show that the former vice president, Mr. Joe Biden, received anywhere upwards of 900,000 USD directly from Burisma Group, where his son was sitting as director, where Devin Archer was there as director, where actually, coincidentally, Alexander, I believe a Polish ex-president, I forgot the name, was also there.
Kniazniewski. He is a political ally of Donald Tusk, and I think we will talk about him soon. Yeah.
So he was on the board. We've documented in our viewers. God bless our viewers. They've documented how Pelosi's son was also operating in Ukraine for an energy company. Mitt Romney's son was in Ukraine working for an energy company. I mean, who didn't have a son or daughter who was in the U.S. government, not, roaming around Ukraine, striking up these energy deals? All of a sudden, all these congressional sons and daughters are energy experts.
Well, indeed so. To answer your question, we know one person whose sons and daughters were not in Ukraine, making lots and lots of money, and that's the Donald. I mean, Donald Trump's family had nothing involved in Ukraine at all. We'll come to this in a moment, but I mean, one of the great paradoxes.
People got angry, Alexander. Before you get into it, now that you remind, people got angry when one of Trump's lawyers and his lawyer's associate was thinking about doing a hotel in Moscow, about it.
Exactly. And
that was a perfectly legal endeavor too, about it.
Thinking about it, and in fact, not only thinking about it, but of course, it never actually happened. And the extent of Donald Trump's direct involvement in that whole transaction, as we've discussed on previous videos, it was very ephemeral. But, the really interesting thing about Trump, and I'm going to say this very quickly, but we constantly hear, if you go to Democratic media, and especially left-wing liberal news sites in the US, they always talk about, this very corrupt president, administration, and all sorts of things. I have not actually come across a single case of proven corruption involving Donald Trump or his family, despite the fact that he must be by now the most exhaustively investigated US president in US history. I mean, there's been nothing other than an apparent payoff of two women, of which the circumstances, even of that, are somewhat murky. But let's move away from that. Let's focus now on Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point.
Because obviously lots and lots and lots of people from the U.S. government were involved. As you say, Romney, Pelosi, Kerry. And of course Biden. I mean, they're all there.
I'm waiting for AOC's sister or brother to have been at the Maidan or something.
Exactly. They're all there. They're all being paid, telephone number salaries, huge salaries. It's very unclear what any of these people were actually doing in Ukraine. Very unclear. And we also get information now from this MP, and I'm going to make a point here. I have not seen these documents this Ukrainian MP is referring to, but he does seem to have access to actual documents, and they seem to have come out of Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau. So they seem to be genuine documents. Obviously, we have to see them first, and they have to be authenticated also. I would make the point that one earlier set of documents, the so-called Black Ledger documents, which supposedly set out illegal payments made by President Yanukovych to Paul Manafort, and which was produced by Sergei Leshchenko, the Ukrainian journalist, and was, distributed via Alexandra Chalupa, who was working for the DNC during the 2016 election, an event which notably is not referred to as collusion between the US, the Democrats and Ukraine in the 2016 election, even though the Ukrainian embassy in Washington was involved. But anyway, that black ledger is now widely believed to be a fake. So it's possible this document or set of documents that allege these big payments to Joe Biden is also a fake. But I suspect not, because, as I said, the source seems to be a good one. As I say, they seem to come from the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. They seem to have been validated by a Ukrainian MP who apparently has a good reputation in this field for producing documents. They seem to be part of the same document haul that people like John Solomon and indeed has been looking at. So on balance, and I wait to be corrected. On balance, I think this is probably correct. In which case, of course, the Biden scandal is going to explode even further as soon as investigations get going. And it's very difficult to see Joe Biden remaining a candidate in the election. But let's put this aside, a hugely interesting and massive potential bombshell as it is.
Can I ask you a question before you proceed, Alexander? Yeah. Can you mention the source as well? I believe Interfax has a report on this. Is the source reliable? As well,
yes,
that's reported
yes,
this?
I think so. As I said, when you look at the source, who's this MP, who is specifically this MP, and the ultimate origin of the documents, which appears to be Ukraine's own National Anti-Corruption Bureau, I would say, to the extent that any Ukrainian source can be called reliable, these are reliable sources. Obviously, I'd want to see the documents first, but I'm going to, for the moment, my operative theory, my hypothesis, is that these documents are true.
And Interfax reporting on this, Interfax has a good record.
Interfax Ukraine, which is the news agency that has reported this story, is one of the most reliable news sources in Ukraine. I mean, we are talking about a very reputable news agency. We are not talking about, fly-in-the-night news agency, of which there are many, by the way, in Ukraine. This is a reliable, proper news agency, part of the larger Interfax Group, which also operates in Russia, by the way, and is considered, one of the best and most reliable news agencies. Okay. So, anyway, I think, as I said, let's come back. I think this allegation is almost certainly, highly probably true. But until we see the documents, I'm not going to discuss it in this video, even though, as I said, if it is true, then it is a gigantic bombshell. Let us look at what was actually going on, because I think we now have enough information to say what was actually going on. Burisma Holdings is a shell company. It doesn't seem as if it was actually, in reality, doing anything very much. It's quite clear that all these people, Hunter Biden, ex-president of Poland, Kwasniewski,
Devon Archer,
all these other people, it doesn't seem as if they were doing anything either. I mean, they're just bumming around, basically, being paid huge sums of money for doing essentially nothing for a company which was doing essentially nothing. And of course, if we take a step even further beyond this, if it's true that this big payment was being made to Joe Biden by this company, then of course, it's obvious that Joe Biden couldn't have been doing anything for this company either. So what was going on? Now, this is where I have to introduce some of our viewers to a word that is widely used in the former Soviet Union. The word is krisha. Krisha means technically roof. It is a corrupt arrangement between one person and a much more powerful person. And it's, in some ways, an insurance policy. And in other ways, it's a kind of protection racket. What happens is one person buys protection and patronage from someone much more powerful than themselves. They pay money, and in return, this very powerful person gives them protection from court proceedings, gives them protection from gangsters, being shaken down by gangsters, makes sure that they're able to get permits for their various businesses from corrupt officials. You know, it keeps this person both out of trouble, the client, if you like, out of trouble, and at the same time promotes that interest. In return, the client pays the patron a certain amount of money and will give them, in effect, political and other support. These arrangements look to me to be krisha. That is to say, all of these Ukrainian oligarchs, and remember, we don't know who the true owner of Burisma Holdings actually was. The person who's been named as its owner, a man called, I think his name is Zochalkovsky, but I probably got it wrong. He looks very much like a front man for someone.
Kolomoisky or Pichuk.
Exactly. I mean, the rumors basically focus on those two. It looks as if all of these people, Knyaznievsky, Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, all of these people have been brought into this company, are being paid large sums of money in order to give cover for the fact that what is being paid for is actually krisha. So you get protection from the person who really runs Ukraine. That person, in 2014, the person who was chairing Ukrainian cabinet meetings, there are photos of him doing it, was Joe Biden. Other people, you also get help from the European Union. The president of the European Council at this time is Donald Tusk. Knyaznievsky, who is the former president of Poland, is known to be a very close associate politically of Donald Tusk. So you're buying yourself krisha, you're getting protection. And what happened with the sacking of Shokin, the the procurator general of Ukraine, the attorney general, if you like, of Ukraine, who is investigating Burisma Holdings, is a classic example of krisha in action. You go to your various protectors, Joe Biden in the United States, the European Union. Remember how they've all made out the fact that the European Union was also supporting Shokin's sacking. The IMF too. All of these people were brought in to stop Shokin carrying out an investigation, because that is what krisha is. Krisha gives you protection. And that's what all these people, Joe Biden, possibly, well, Hunter Biden, possibly Joe Biden, definitely Knyaznievsky, definitely Devon Archer. That's what it looks like they were being paid for.
So in the case of like Hunter Biden, let's take this case. You know, Joe Biden sends his goofball failing son, who just can't seem to get anything right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know Hunter Biden, but that's the characterization that, I kind of get a sense of by, all the things that, he's had happen to him and the choices he's made. And, they say, let's send, goofball Hunter to Ukraine so he can, shore up our next corruption scheme. He's like he's that idiot you send with the bag of money, what I mean, to carry that bag of money and, deliver it from point A to point B and just don't mess up. He's
Yeah.
the Fredo of the Corleone family. Don't mess
Yes.
up. Just do
Yes.
your job. And the
Yes.
money eventually is going to end up in Uncle Joe's hands, and Uncle Joe will divvy it up and distribute it accordingly. And 45 billion was poured into Ukraine. The Ukrainians really didn't see much of that 45 billion, if any. No one even talks about that 45 billion. No one,
No.
especially the 20 billion, whatever it was that came from the EU. Everyone in the EU was quiet about it. Everyone.
Yes.
While they were pillaging every single other country from Cyprus to Greece to Spain to Italy to Ireland, and they were putting us under austerity. They were taking 20 billion from our tax dollars, tax euros, and they were giving it to Ukraine, which would leave via the back door, via Cyprus, Latvia, to the U.S., to Uncle Joe. Am I characterizing this correctly? And Hunter Biden was kind of that, guy that they sent in to prepare the ground for all this stuff.
Absolutely, though, of course, I would stress, of course, that whatever money may have reached Uncle Joe back in Washington would have been dwarfed by the money that whoever is behind Burisma Holdings was probably stealing. So, I mean, the major thieves here, it should be said, are Ukrainian oligarchs. That's what they've been doing ever since Ukraine became independent. And after 2014, after the coup, whatever restraints were left in Ukraine, which were never very strong, they seem to have completely dissolved. Because to be very clear, what became of Ukraine after the Maidan coup was a situation where the state itself had basically collapsed and was basically run by and for various oligarchs. And as I said, these oligarchs were buying themselves what, I mean, frankly, looks to me like Krisha protection from all sorts of powerful people, Joe Biden and the United States. I'm going to make a guess, as I said, there's clearly a Polish connection, which goes all the way back to the EU itself. As a Donald Tusk, president of the European Council, let us not forget that. So
and
all
also
of that,
the Polish, and while you're on the Polish thing, Alexander, there was also the Polish, the foreign minister was also involved in the Maidan negotiations, and he kind of backstabbed, the deal, the Yanukovych deal, correct?
Absolutely. Radek Sikorski is an absolutely key player in all of the events that took place in 2014. And I would add, by the way,
he's married to
Anne Applebaum,
who's also
who is also, well, she's a very prominent publicist and journalist in the United States and indeed in Britain. We also read her a lot in Britain, and she takes a very strong anti-Putin and anti-Russian position. But as I say, I want to stress, I mean, so far, Radek Sikorski himself has not been implicated in anything. I mean, maybe at some point we're going to find something, but at the moment, we've got nothing that ties in him.
Yeah, but there's a Polish element
clearly
to this.
Clearly there is, because as I said, the former president of Poland, Kwasniewski, was a director of Burisma Holdings, which seems extraordinary. I mean, as I said, the other thing to come back to is it's not clear what any of these people were actually doing for the money they were being paid. I mean, what was the work they were doing? As you rightly said, none of these people could by any stretch of the imagination be called energy specialists. So what was their skill set that they were bringing with them to Ukraine? I will say it again. It looks to me like they were there in order to buy for someone, probably Kolomoisky, possibly Pinchuk, political protection. That's what it looks like to me. And of course, there was no two people more important in Ukraine in 2014 or for years after than Joe Biden, who was the point man, the vice president of the United States and the US government's point man in running Ukrainian affairs, and Donald Tusk, who was the president of the European Council at a time when Ukraine was supposedly, getting help, lots and lots of help from the EU. So, you have this extraordinary setup involving Burisma Holdings, money passing through Burisma Holdings to these people or to people very closely associated with these people. In Joe Biden's case, his son Hunter. In Donald Tusk's case, Knyazniewski. And in return, Burisma Holdings is able to get the chief Ukrainian prosecutor, Shokin, who's investigating them. It's able to use these contacts to get that person sacked. That looks to me like classic Krisha. I use that word again. People can go on the internet and find out what it means. It looks to me like a classic Krisha operation.
Let me throw something at you, Alexander. Okay, Pinchuk was I believe the top, or one of the top donators to the Clinton Foundation.
Yes.
This is fact.
Yes.
Now, we've always said that the origins of Russiagate were in Ukraine and in the UK.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's also an accepted fact that a lot of money that gets taken out by these oligarchs ends up in the City of London.
Yes.
Correct? I mean, that's not
Absolutely.
a secret. The City of London owns a lot of these guys' money.
Absolutely not a secret at all. On the contrary, it's a universally acknowledged fact. One of the really frustrating things, and I come back to this again and again and again, an awful lot of what you read about in the media, especially in Britain, which is referred to as Russian money, is not Russian money at all. It is Ukrainian, because Ukrainians and Russians talk essentially the same language, because one of the other paradoxes of all of this is that most of these Ukrainian oligarchs, their first language and the language they usually speak in is Russian. It's not Ukrainian. Because these people come over as Russians, they are thought of as Russians, whereas they are actually, and in reality, Ukrainians. This isn't widely understood. So the City of London is directly centrally involved in all these activities.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
I see exactly where you're
because
going.
It seems you have a Clinton connection, you have Pinchuk, you have Kolomos, you have all this oligarch money from Ukraine going into the City of London, and all of a sudden, when Trump gets elected, you have this Russiagate hoax, where the two central pillars of this hoax, where all the deep state and the swamp is operating in order to provide this protection, it seems to me, happens to be the UK and Ukraine.
I think that I saw exactly where you were going, and I think you are absolutely right. I mean, can I just say something? I mean, again, it's well known that a lot of this Ukrainian money in London has bought political influence. And it is also widely known in Britain, though not much spoken about, that the British intelligence services and the Ukrainian Secret Service, the SBU, work extremely closely together. Christopher Steele, one of his reports, which has never been published, was a report about Russian involvement in Ukraine, which what we all know, in fact, took a very, very strongly Ukrainian position, pro-Ukrainian position. So there is an intimate connection between Britain and Ukraine. And as I said, we know about all of these Americans going to Ukraine. We don't yet know the whole details of the British angle.
Is that your protection, Alexander? There's your protection. Here comes Trump. As you said many times, he campaigned on draining the swamp and better relations with Russia. But, here you have a guy saying, I'm going to drain the swamp. And here you have all these people that were becoming incredibly rich by being part of the swamp. And so, you just put the wheels in motion. The oligarchs in Ukraine go to, the people in the UK. And they, activate the deep state in the UK. They activate the deep state in the US. And here you go. You have Russiagate.
You've joined up the dots, Alex. That is exactly what I'm saying. I mean, at the end of the day, you are buying yourself protection. You're buying yourself protection from people like Shokin in Ukraine itself. And can I just say something about Shokin? I mean, Shokin, I don't want to give our viewers the impression that I think that Shokin is clean as the driven snow. It's quite possible that his investigations of Burisma Holdings were being carried out at the instigation of another oligarch. He seems to be very close to a man called Firtash, who is another big name, big league oligarch in Ukraine. These oligarchs are constantly fighting each other. There's continuous internecine squabbles between them as they maneuver for power. Kolomoisky, who quite likely is the ultimate owner of Burisma Holdings, had a major falling out eventually with President Poroshenko, and his bank, Privat Bank, was at one point seized. He's now trying to get it back. So, I mean, you have all this power play going on. But anyway, the point is, you get protection to protect you from people like Shokin and whoever might be behind Shokin. And of course, you also buy yourself protection in Britain and in the United States. Russiagate? Possibly.
Incredible. I think, we're getting close, Alexander. We're getting close to connecting all these dots. And there is no difference between Ukraine Gate and Russiagate.
Well, no, they are
one and the same.
They are one and the same, except, of course, that the Democrats have been stampeded. Probably, as I said, because Giuliani and, much more importantly, Barr are now sniffing around what was actually going on in Ukraine. They've been stampeded into this extraordinary impeachment process, which isn't really an impeachment process because there's not been a proper vote in the House of Representatives to launch it. But they were stampeded into it. And it suggests panic. It suggests panic amongst the Democrats. It may suggest panic on the part of their people, the people who were they got into bed with in Ukraine itself.
Can I ask you one final question before we wrap this up? We're running a little long, but I want to ask you a final question. Just came to my head. Do you think that Trump and the Trump White House is putting Giuliani out in front? And I don't want to say he's acting crazy, but he's being very. I mean, he's making his rounds on TV quite a lot, and he's saying a lot of things. Sometimes he's saying stuff which, may sound a bit inappropriate or a bit loony at times. But do you think they're doing that so as to keep the attention focused on Giuliani while Barr and Duran kind of quietly really sniff around? Like, here's Giuliani sniffing around. That's your distraction. But the real investigation is going on between Barr and Duran, and don't even look there.
I absolutely think that. I have no doubt at all of this. I mean, Giuliani has no investigative powers. He is the president's lawyer. He goes there, he can meet all sorts of people. But at the end of the day, it's Barr and Durham who will do the real investigation in Ukraine, getting whatever help from the Ukrainian authorities, Zelensky's authorities, that they can get. So that's what the real investigation is. But I think the other part that Giuliani is playing is he's not only distracting attention from Barr and Durham, he's also bringing this thing to public notice. Because if Giuliani wasn't talking about it and going on all these programs and, talking, big and noisy about it, the American people wouldn't know. I mean, they simply wouldn't know. Nobody is in the media has been reporting this story until very recently. As you've rightly said in our previous programs, on the Duran, we've been writing about this for years. I mean, I think you said you've got articles going back to 2014, before we even started the Duran, which have been touching about touching on Hunter Biden and his role in Burisma Holdings and all this. Nobody in mainstream media in the United States would go there. And if Giuliani hadn't been going around stirring up this hornet's nest, probably no one would. So that's, I think, partly what he's doing. And by launching this impeachment inquiry, the Democrats have played straight into his hands. I mean, in a sense, he probably didn't want an impeachment inquiry But I mean, in a sense, in a way, you could almost say that he intentionally provoked it.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on that subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell. Click on that like button and share the channel with everybody. You know, help us get to 100,000 subscribers. We're getting very, very close. And Alexander, buying merchandise also helps spread the word about the Duran.
Absolutely. I mean, can I just come back to our magic mug? I brought this one along, which has the Alpha Force. This is Russia's elite special forces unit. You can be absolutely sure that these guys who have Ukraine sewn up know all the answers to all the questions that we've asked on this video. And who knows? Before long, we might be getting answers from them because, as I said, the Russians have actually openly admitted that they're agents. They have agents all over Ukraine. They know, in Putin's words, all the meetings that happened, where they happened, all the money that's changed hands. Just keep that in mind. So if you want to get something that identifies you with those people, well, here's this amazing magic mug with the Alpha Force badge. But we've got other ones. We've got this one also, which is one of my favorite at the moment, which is Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, which is, I think, an absolutely great foreign minister, perhaps the greatest foreign minister we've seen since the Second World War. So we have mugs like this. We've got shirts like the one I'm wearing. We've got polo shirts like the one Alex is wearing. Absolutely phenomenal apparel. We've got hoodies. We've got hats. We've got stickers. Our shirts are of absolute A1 quality. They're 100% cotton. They're superbly well stitched and made. They are, not at all the kind of T-shirts that some of our competitors sell, some of them trying to copy us, by the way. They are real high quality, high grade apparel, as our mugs are. And you can buy all this fantastic stuff from our shop. You're supporting the Duran by doing so. It's how, one of the things that enables us to give you this great analysis like the sort we've just given you on this program. So you can help us, you can help yourself. Go to our shop. Alex will tell you how to do it.
Yep, you'll find a link to the Duran shop in the description box down below, theduranshop.com. Also go to our BitChute channel as well and check us out there. And PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, donating to us also helps keep this channel moving forward and growing. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.